Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to our NoCodeOps live community show. I hope you're doing well wherever in the world you're joining us from. And actually, as I always like to say, please drop us a comment in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what do you do? What do you hope to see from our events? Tell me how much you love our community and why. And if you're not part of our community and this is your first time, we're NoCodeOps, an international community for operations professionals who leverage the power of no code and automation at work. We have a super active Discord server and where we host a bunch of events, including our live streams today. And in the past few weeks, we've been focusing a lot on revenue operations as it's set to be the fastest growing career in the US right now. And so, because of that, I've been inviting influential speakers from that industry and that space. And today is no different. We're joined by Cameron. Hi, Cameron. How are you
Hi,
today?
how you doing? Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm really, really happy to have you here. I
Amazing.
know that you're coming from a slightly different position than a revenue operations professional. You're a customer success manager at Pixel.io, but I know
Yes,
that
yeah.
you've had a ton of experience working in RevOps. And when you showed me what you do to manage your automations and your workflows, I had to call you in for our events. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for having me as well. It's great to
And
be here as well. It's a great opportunity.
yeah, absolutely. And I can see we have some friends in the chat as well. Neil from Gloucester, UK, Rosa. So great to see you guys. We like to interact as much as possible with our audience. So please use and abuse the chat. We'll leave some time for our Q&A after the presentation, but this is our chance to grow together. And so, Cameron, tell me a little bit about yourself, because before we get into the weeds of our topic today, which is how to automate churn prevention, and what was the second part? And drive
Yeah,
expansion.
predicting
That's it.
churn and driving, revenue expansion. That's
Amazing. But
the
before we get there, I would like to hear more about you and your life as a professional. How did you end up doing what you're doing today? Because I always find it inspiring for me and for other people to hear as well.
yeah, absolutely. So my role, so I work at Pixel at the moment. So that's a RevOps HubSpot consultancy, and I'm the customer success manager there. I typically, my main focus is sort of managing customer success, and dealing with the sort of the scaling side of the business on that side, and also managing the clients and supporting the consultants. But my main focus is, my main goal is retention and preventing churn. That's my bread and butter.
Amazing. And when did you start automating your work?
Do you know, I got into it, it's been about 2 years of playing with automations now. So I
Hmm.
think, it's quite early. I think, I'm not sure how long Zapier or no code automations has been going for. But I've been, playing around with it for that time. And then, since starting at Pixar, I've been really getting into it and learning everything there is to do with, automation and workflows.
Amazing. Well, we've definitely been around for a bit longer than 2 years. And some people say that actual no code started back in the days with Excel. So I think we can go back to even before you and I were born.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
amazing. And for our topic today, let me just pull in your slides that you have here. So, yes, scaling customer success and predicting churn with an automated health scoring system. Can you tell me a little bit more about what we are about to see? Or I'll just let you go with the flow and
Yeah,
just welcome everyone to, welcome to everyone who's watching us on YouTube
yeah.
and LinkedIn.
Welcome everybody. I'll basically be giving you a quick overview on how to set up an automated health scoring system. It seems to be like a running challenge when it comes to a lot of companies that they're looking to predict their churn and scale customer success. It's a big part of revenue operations. A lot of people think revenue operations is mainly marketing and sales, but there's also another aspect to revenue operations, which is looking into the customer success side. So that's what I sort of want to talk with you guys about today. I will be going into our own health scoring system and how we set that up, but also I'll be giving, a bit of an overview on how to set your own health scoring system up and what the benefits are. And I think there'll be there should be some time for some questions at the end as well. But I'll get started. So I'll start talking. start off by talking about, who this would be important for, what the goal is going to be today, and the takeaway you can get. So this is typically going to be for, customer success professionals, RevOps professionals, and business leaders and founders. It really benefits these guys. These guys are dealing with this specific problem. So if any of you guys, are looking to sort of get into that realm, or are in that realm, it'd be really a useful topic for you to have a look into. The goal today is, for everybody here to know how to automate customer health tracking, predicting churn, identifying upsell opportunities, and just getting rid of any of the guesswork that's at play. And I want you guys to sort of be able to take away from this session the ability to not have to, guess and use your gut instincts to decide whether a client's going to leave or a customer's going to leave, but instead use the data to actually know, get some insights into if a customer's at risk of leaving, or even if there's an opportunity there for you as well.
I love that you're looking at it from a different angle than what, and you said it as well, like what most people often think about when they hear RevOps is like, or marketing, or business ops, sales ops. You're coming in from a customer point of view, which is customer retention and satisfaction as well to a certain extent. So that's really cool, because we can see how
Yeah.
so many departments can affect and have an impact on revenue as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's important to note as well, customer success is quite new as well, in terms of RevOps and customer success. They're both quite new, sort of growing industries, but marketing and sales has been around for ages. So it's good.
Exactly.
I just wanted to sort of give it some more attention as well on that front.
And is that before? I know I'm asking too many questions here, but have you noticed this? Have you noticed that as well? Like everyone is talking about RevOps now in 2025, and I've
Yeah,
had some people in the community that they've told me, like, Claudia, I feel like I've been in RevOps for the past 15 years, but finally somebody's giving it a name.
yeah. Everybody is growing. Everyone's demanding RevOps. Everyone's looking to streamline their operations, make things more efficient. And that's literally, that's become the biggest priority for a lot of companies now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, exciting times.
Amazing. So I guess the next point would just be, I'm just going to talk a bit about, what we're doing at Pixel and what our problem was, because we had the same issue at Pixel when it came to, predicting when a client's going to churn, how they're going to churn. So Pixel is a RevOps HubSpot agency. So we basically help other businesses streamline their operations using HubSpot. We've been around for about 2.5 years now. Started off with just the founder Fawad and Rabia, shout out, and then it's grown to 14 employees now. So when we first, when I first joined, that the goal was mainly to sort of build out a customer success department, and then move from the customer success department that's reacting to things that are happening. We needed to sort of then predict, understand why clients are leaving, come up with some sort of systems and operations to make our processes more efficient. So because right now we're in a point where we're scaling and we're having these problems, so we needed to build these systems out and have these things automated. So that was the biggest challenge we were having, which is at the beginning of this year, where we couldn't predict when a customer was going to churn. So we didn't know who to prioritize. We didn't know, why customers are churning. We couldn't predict when a customer was going to churn. It was just happening unexpectedly, right? So we needed to shift from, using our gut feeling to, actually looking at the data and figuring out, okay, this customer is looking like it's going to churn. What can we do about it? And that's where we were trying to get to. So what we ended up doing, typically, usually things like this are set up for SaaS, but we set it up for business services. So our company's a business services subscription model. And what we did is we used we created a workflow in Zapier to track the engagement from our customers on the service level and the project delivery level. And basically, we were able to sort of get real-time insights, about the health of the account, and then use that for retention or expansion opportunities. So it went from
really
being
cool.
reactive to proactive.
I love that so much, because I feel like the majority of people think that Zapier often works just as a connector, just as the glue between, A to B. But actually, you can do so much more with the
Yeah,
platform and all the things, all the different services and different apps that we have. And this is a clear example of it. Like thinking about how to predict, that why is that happening? Can we get health on our, customer success and using
yeah,
that
yeah.
prediction? So I love this use case.
We actually one of my favorite things we do with Zapier is using the Python feature or the looping feature that's inside Zapier, these extra tools. That
Mhm.
if you've got a limitation between softwares that you're sending this data to the other side, but there's a formatting problem, you can actually use Zapier to reformat that in the correct format to get it to the other place, which is a really useful problem to solve. That doesn't
Love it.
require too much coding, but it's really useful.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to jump into the next slide here. So this is mainly just talking about the problem. So the problem with traditional customer tracking, it's not scalable is the first thing. If you're doing everything manually, that's less time you could be spending on revenue generating activities, which is the whole point of RevOps, right? It's building systems so that you can spend your team can spend more time on activities and decisions and processes that actually generate revenue directly, rather than the admin work that can sort of get in the way of that process. So the goal, is to do that, and the other thing is these churn risks go unnoticed. You have no idea when a customer is going to churn because you've got nothing to predict it, which is another problem, which is it's concerning, and there's obviously you don't know who your high value customers are. You're
Mhm.
overlooking them because you've got so many customers you're dealing with, but you don't have any data on those customers and where they are in their journey. Are they a healthy customer? Are they unhealthy? It really helps to have this sort of a scoring system to really know when you can take advantage of looking after those high value customers or getting them to advocate for you. It's really great.
Data is such a
Yeah,
powerful thing to have. Like on our
yeah,
last
yeah,
live stream with Penny, we were talking about how companies sometimes, especially when they're talking to operations professionals like yourself or professionals in automation, and they just hire you and all they want to see is data. They just ask you to give them data, but they don't actually know what to do with that data, right? And so you're showing a really clever way, and an impact that it can have. Actually, let's use that data. Let's analyze
yeah,
what's going on. Why are we getting churn in the first place? And so that
yeah,
we can act
yeah.
on it.
It's really important to figure out what data you need and make sure it's being measured,
Mm.
and then you just look at the data and what can you do with that data. You've got all the Lego blocks, and you just need to put them together.
Right. It's not enough to just pull it right from whatever system you're using and just like populate a beautiful database. You have to actually think
Yeah,
about the process that you're going to implement and how you're going to use that data.
yeah, yeah. When it comes to health scoring as well, like when you're building a health scoring system, you need to come up with sort of equations that make sense. There's certain calculations, certain weightages you'd use when it comes to building that health score. I'll explain all of that later on as well. But yeah, it's really helpful when it comes to building these sort of calculations or scoring systems, to look at it that way.
Brilliant. And we have more and more people joining us. I'm looking at you guys on LinkedIn here on my left and people on YouTube as well. So I love the enthusiasm. Keep it coming.
Amazing. Yeah, and then so the next thing is the impact. So you've got these problems. What's the impact of these problems? You're wasting effort on the wrong clients. You're losing valuable accounts due to lack of insights. You're missing ups and advocacy opportunities, and you're being reactive and you're firefighting instead of actually strategically, proactively reaching out to the right clients because you have that information. So it's really important to consider that as well. Now I want to sort of move from the sort of the problem to the solution. So my focus here is going to be mainly how to structure a customer health scoring score. So I'm basically going to break it down into, first of all, starting with the goal. What are you looking to achieve? Then you're going to look at the actual factors that are going to influence churn, right? So that's what you're trying to predict. And it's not just going to influence churn, but it's also looking at the factors that influence churn and influence advocacy as well, and a happy customer. So yeah, we'll start by looking at those two factors. Then you're going to be going into the actual how a health score is calculated, and then what I'll do at the end is just talk you through the tech stack that we used to calculate our health score, and how you can use Zapier and HubSpot as well, and how these tools are going to be really beneficial for you.
I love that, and they often go hand in hand, those two.
Yeah, they're really useful together. One stores the data, one moves the data, so it's perfect.
I love it. John Keane, we've got a big audience in the US, and he says, "I'm here for the accents." To be fair, to be honest.
Thanks, John. Okay, so the next one is the goal of our automated system. So like this is the actual goal we had for our system. So what we were looking at doing is, we wanted to track the interactions, and we didn't have a way to measure the data coming from our communication channels. So we had, communications happening on emails, communications happening on Slack. We had meetings, and we had actually people using the HubSpot software as well. We wanted to measure, what's the product usage like there too. We also wanted to, be able to trigger alerts that go out to us and, tell us whether there's a churn risk or there's an expansion opportunity. And we wanted to be able to assign a score based on this engagement level and this product usage as well. So the first thing we had to do is sort of do some digging, which I'll be going into here. So yeah, so the first thing before I go into what we're looking at is to look at the actual factors that could influence churn. So there's a couple of main topics. Some of them apply to different industries and some of them don't. So for example, like the service engagement, it's not really going to be that applicable to SaaS, but it's more so important for business services that use the subscription model. If you want to sort of provide a good service, the amount of engagement you're having and communication you're having with your clients shows good, good engagement. So if you'll be able to measure the meetings, emails, and Slack, when the client's messaging, when you're messaging, when was the last touch from the client, that's really useful information to have. The second point is product and service usage. So if you're looking to measure the service usage, that's, you're looking at the project management data, right? You're using the data from the project management software that you're using and the client that you're managing, and you're understanding, on a daily basis or a weekly, monthly, whatever you use to measure, how often how many tasks are being worked on, is it how many projects, how much admin work, what kind of tasks are they working on, and you can use that to sort of score a system there that will contribute to that health score. And the same thing for a SaaS model. If you're using, it would apply based on features. So there would be things such as feature activation, or how much a client is using that feature on a monthly, daily, weekly basis, and you can sort of measure that in information, and that can contribute to your scoring as well. When it comes to support requests, this is typically, this is useful for most businesses. So if somebody, sends a message out saying, they're having trouble with, for example, using HubSpot, connecting their email account to HubSpot, that's a trigger to say, that's a potential friction with the product, which isn't great, which shows that they might be having trouble, with the software, which is potentially a risk. So it would impact the health score in that way. Another thing that people often overlook, it does have more of an impact in business services, but when it can also have an impact in SaaS, is the decision maker not really seeing the value of the software that you're using. Usually, a lot of the people that are using the software is the champion. So the champions are using the software. They might be the CSM managers, or they might be the sales executives, or whoever that is, or even just the customers. But the people that pay might not see the value. I think this applies more so to B2B as well, but they're not going to see the value in this product because they're not actually using it. So they're either going to get feedback there, but they might even come to the decision that they don't see the need to spend this money on this software, because they just don't see the value because they're not actually using the software or using it to solve their problems. So that can be a risk as well.
Yeah, which is why we also hosted the ROI of automation last week or a few weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah. So I love it because it's like we've been crafting a really good story here with all these live streams, because I can see how everything that you guys are working on, or all the challenges that you have to face every day, how they're really so entangled. And what you're saying today, I keep thinking about something that we discussed in the past live streams. I love it how it's all very well connected, and once you nail it, once you address all these different areas, you can actually create a really smart and powerful system.
Yeah. And it just takes time and getting all that data together. Once you've got it, it's really useful. And you can use it. You don't just need to use it for health scoring. It can be used, you can create scoring systems for anything that you want to solve and automate. Like lead scoring, for example, is another topic, which is talking about that movement from marketing to sales. I'll just carry on as well. So that the customer sentiment and feedback. So this is more so, you're measuring, the feedback. It might be a net promoter score. It could be a customer satisfaction survey on a scale of 1 to 10. And a customer gives you a rating there, and that contributes to your health score. Or you can even use the sentiment if you want to get even more technical, and take the keywords from a customer's sentiment on their feedback in the forms, or in the community management. When people are communicating on social media, there's stuff like that you can use and collect that information and measure that sentiment. But in terms of the feedback, if you're getting feedback, you can use the keywords in the sentiment in the feedback to measure the customer's sentiment as well. And the last one is outcomes. So with that, it's it's basically, has the customer done this or have they not done this? Have they activated that feature or have they not activated that feature? Or, have they completed onboarding or have they not completed onboarding? Did they follow the steps that you provided them on the actual software? That's already, you might have created a walkthrough onboarding on the software, and a customer would either complete that or they wouldn't complete that, and that would impact, that can have an impact on your health scoring as well.
1,000%, which is why you guys get so many emails from me when you don't open my community onboarding. And after a few months, it's like, hey, it's me. I noticed you haven't checked that out. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm just going to move on to the next slide, which is now actually going over the health score and how it's calculated. So this is breaking it down. I'm going to be talking about, first of all, how can your churn influencing factors contribute to health score? Then you want to look at what data is available or can be available, because you can, calculate data or reformat data as well, which is really useful to do with Zapier. How can your factors be scored with the data that you have? What weightage do you want to assign to the individual factors? How much of an impact do they have to your health scoring? And then also, what sort of equation can you create for the final health score? So just starting off, I want to talk about how can your churn influencing factors contribute to health score? So we did discuss this earlier, but you want to sort of, first of all, really think about what is causing your clients to churn from the past data that you have. You might have done exit interviews or these sorts of things to identify or find out why a client is leaving, and you can use that information that you have to decide what factors are the most impactful, what factors influence the health score, and reasons why they churn. And if you haven't got that data, it's always a good idea to start collecting that data, because this data is going to be useful for you to actually calculate these health scores, right? So that's
and
it's
even easier now. I don't know if you agree, but with all, obviously with AI, it's a lot easier to use that data and have AI analyze it and give you a faster response.
If you just give the data to AI and you tell it what you wanted to do, it'll do it all for you. So that is really useful. And that's actually, I was actually going to bring that up as well. That is a potential thing that can happen as well in the future. Like AI will probably get involved in health scoring, which should be exciting as well.
Yeah, we have an example in the chat from Tali. She
Yeah.
says, we've built a 7-day comparison evaluation. AI checks the results on a database and it triggers an email to a human. I like they always have a human in the loop step. If
Yeah.
it's a backend problem on our end, we fix it. If we require the customer to do something, we give them a call. So yeah, you can.
Awesome.
That's a good way. We often think about what's a good use case for AI, and so I feel like these examples are actually AI put it at a good, good use, good cause.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to go to the next slide here. So the next thing is, once you've figured out what factors are influencing your health scoring system, or what's causing them to churn or become advocates, you next want to sort of look at the data that you have. And when I say, like, if you don't have the data, make sure you're starting to collect that data. That's another thing. You want to make sure you first of all figure out what the factors are, then realize what data do I need to measure that factor. Or you can look at the data and say, do I need to convert that data with an equation or a calculation to give me the actual data that I need? Is there a couple of pieces of data that I have available that I can use to do that? Or you can reformat that data as well. An example of what we did recently is we had the timestamp in Slack, which was, the timestamp was calculated in milliseconds from the date of Jan 1970. And then we basically used Python to just reformat it. So we reformatted that to a HubSpot friendly date format using the Zapier workflow, and then populated that inside HubSpot. And that gave us the information we needed to actually, then create another calculation, which we used to calculate the days since, and then we could figure out when the last touch point was for the client, and when the last touch point was for ourselves as well. And that's what we did.
I'd love to see a screenshot of that build, maybe after our stream, if you could send me a little,
Yeah,
little
absolutely.
photo.
I think I'll share it with you. I'm gonna actually do a post on it next as well, a LinkedIn post. So I'll share that post with you as well, so you can see the workflow that we created.
I love it. I love it because our audience, we have a great combo of obviously business people, professionals, and builders as well. So I often find that your presentation here will be great and super valuable to the business people who want to see the result and where they can get to. And I can see the builders asking me after this live stream, oh, how did he build that? Can we have a look into it?
Yeah,
So
yeah, and also, like, if you want to know, just reach out to me as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you've got a particular problem, happy to help as well.
I'll share your LinkedIn in the chat. Awesome.
So yeah, so when you have the data and you figured out, how you can calculate, how to get the right data that you need, then you want to think about as well how to score that data. And that can be, for example, like an activation thing. It's either a yes or a no. It's a true false situation, or it can be a situation where it's going to be based on a threshold. Say, if, for example, if a feature's been used this many times in that space of time, then it falls into that sort of scoring category. Otherwise, it goes into a lower scoring category if it's less and less and less and less. And you can sort of create a scoring system like that as well. And there's loads of different ways. There's probably like many different ways you can create something like that. You can also, create a score from sub scores that you're, looking at other factors that influence that score. For example, what we did with our engagement score is we scored our Slack channel in terms of engagement. We scored our meeting channel, and we scored our email channel. And what we did with that is we used those scores to actually calculate we weighted that, and we used those scores to actually calculate the engagement score, and that engagement score was the one that contributed to the health score. So that's another sort of thing you can do as well. If you need to calculate more, but it's not going to be valuable to just. It's another way you can do it, basically.
What do you use for the calculation itself? Like when you pull out those timestamps and...
Yeah, so I mainly use HubSpot. So there's a calculated field inside HubSpot. So for example, I use conditional logic. So it's like the if equation inside HubSpot's calculated field, which will basically say, if this was greater than or equal to this, then set score to this, and then I'll move to the next one. If then I'll create an if conditional inside that if, and then do that over and over again, and it sort of gives you like a calculator that tells you what it's going to be on a scoring basis.
Nice.
So once you have that, the next thing you want to think about is the weightage. So when it comes to weightage, you basically want to think about, and this is all it's all kind of you have to sort of gauge it, or you can use your reports and that sort of thing, or you can use your maybe churn reasons why a customer churned to sort of figure out, what's more impactful, what reasons are coming up most that a client's churning. And you can basically assign a percentage based on the amount of impact that it's going to have on the client if that's got a poor score, and that will contribute to your health score. So, for example, on the right here, you guys can see, hopefully, there's a score of 25% of the service engagement here. Service utilization's got a score of 25%. And then, there's other scores with a lower scoring impact because they're not as impactful as those first two factors. So there's things that you can consider like that as well. I think we did a thing as well, which I'll go into more detail on in like another post. But it's mainly about like the churn risk modifier as well. So if a certain score goes below a certain point, then it's actually really critical. So the score's bumped, to the left more. So it's bumped lower to make sure that it is crucial that is a potential churn risk.
It becomes high priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see Sahan in the chat, and they say we've seen system uptime and reliability as another metric to monitor automation health score. Helps understand how often the automation runs smoothly without failures.
Awesome. So this is the equation we used. I think this is recorded, so if you guys want to pause it and have a look at it at some point later, that's possible. But we basically, this is how we sort of set it up inside HubSpot. So we calculated a calculated field where we're linking the properties of the actual scoring factors, and then we added that weightage, and we basically did that for every one of our scoring factors. Any of our scoring factors that were, say, if this one here, for example, the unified usage score is out of 100, so we just divided it by 10, so it would fit into the scoring system. And then we used conditional logic for the churn modifier as well. But yeah, that's like an example of how that's set up, and you guys can refer to that if you need to, just to sort of build the final equation for the health score.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. I love to think that our live streams, and I always say this at the beginning, like this is our opportunity to grow together, because I find them to be so valuable, again, for whoever's watching to actually implement what you're teaching us today at work tomorrow. Like it's going to be, this is why we do it, right?
This is
what
it,
I want. Yeah.
And and I guess the next thing that'd be really useful for everybody would be just knowing what tech stack we used, because there's a number of tech stacks out there, but I really think that the best tech stack for me is this one. Like mainly I'd say for most businesses, HubSpot, Zapier, and Python. Just knowing a little bit of Python just to help you sort of reformat data and that sort of thing, and just do little equations to just calculate the data that you need. And then the additional ones that aren't always crucial are going to be sort of Google Sheets and Slack. Slack I like to use, we use Slack internally, so we send sort of our alerts via Slack. So if a health score goes below a certain point, or if it goes above a certain point, there's an advocacy opportunity or a churn risk opportunity, churn risk there. So we use that for that. And then Google Sheets, we use it if we're having like problems where Zapier's trigger is limiting, so we need to use like a loop. So we use the data that's inside the Google Sheets, and we make we use like a find companies action in Zapier and have that looped using the record ID, the company from HubSpot in that spreadsheet, and it'll just basically find that company, and then it'll update the company record. Because I think there's like a workaround as well. There's a few workarounds you can use, which I'll also be sharing a screenshot of that in one of the posts too.
Nice.
But yeah, those are really useful things. And then the main ones, Zapier and HubSpot. HubSpot storing the data. It's a CRM. It's my favorite CRM. I know the ins and outs of it, so I'm really happy with this one. And it's the most user-friendly one as well. So if you're just getting started, I always recommend HubSpot. And then when it comes to Zapier, this is probably by far the best tool. It's also one of the most user-friendly tools as well when it comes to starting out with no-code automation. It's really easy to set up a workflow and set up an automated sequence. So if any of you guys haven't had a look, definitely check it out. And there's a free plan for both of these softwares. The next part I want to talk about is how we used Zapier and HubSpot. So what we did with Zapier and HubSpot is the first thing is we used HubSpot for sort of data storage. So we used HubSpot to store all of our data and calculate some of the data into the scores. And we used Zapier to sort of retrieve that data for us based on a schedule or a trigger. And we also used it to reformat some of our data as well. So that was really useful for us. And then when it came to processing that data, we used Python inside Zapier to sort of reformat like a data type, which is, calculate the days since between two dates, which is quite hard to do with other softwares. So we ended up just using Python for that. And then, for example, just actually assigning the health score, we used the calculated field inside HubSpot to do that. And we used Zapier and Slack to sort of create a trigger alert that would, let people know whether there was an upsell opportunity or revenue, a potential advocacy opportunity or a churn risk.
And speaking, I don't know if you're happy to take a question now, but speaking of churn risks, I can see one from Bjorn. Would you like to take a question
Go
now?
ahead. Yeah,
It was just because it really relates to what you're talking about here. What would the best early indicators of churn be?
I'd say it depends on the business model, but it's always the same thing. The same thing would be like the client's not utilizing the software. They're not truly activated. So they're like, if they're not using your service properly or they're not using your product properly, that's probably for me has the biggest impact, because if they're not using it, they're not getting any value because they're not using it, or they find it too hard to use, and there's so much friction with the product that they just can't use it. And that's a sign that, if they're paying, they're practically paying for nothing if they can't use it. So that's probably the most impactful thing.
Absolutely. And that update that you have, like a churn risk, would that be when the user, for example, hasn't been in the platform for 2 to 3 months, or do you have, I guess you have your own, your special features that you look at?
Yeah, so we actually recently HubSpot has given us a new way to see the usage data from their side. So we actually use that score to tell, measure on a scale of 1 to 100, what the usage of their software is. And what that score tracks, it basically tracks, the usage of each individual feature. Is that what you meant, Claudia?
Yeah, probably just like, those updates that you get. I guess as you were saying, each business has its own way of analyzing churn, and what it means to you might not be the same to another.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so some things, for us, what matters is, service. They're using our service a lot, so we typically look at, how many projects we're working on with a monthly basis. We look at, how many meetings they're having with us. Are they seeing, because if they're having more meetings with us, they see the value in having more meetings with us. So that's really valuable for us to sort of see that they are wanting to jump on calls with us, because they're busy people, right? They've got other things to do in their day. They've got other problems to solve. And if they can jump on a call with us, it's great, because that shows that we're providing value to them.
It shows that they're giving you priority over whatever else is going on, which I guess going back to Bjorn's question here, which, best early indicators of churn, that's why I was asking that question, because it depends, Bjorn, it depends on what's moving your needle at your company, and it depends on what you want to prioritize as well. So yeah, churn is basically what you want to avoid. So It depends on what you want to have more of and limitate, with the churn.
Yeah, and that's I think I've got another slide which will just go into a little bit of detail. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the next one, or I think it's the next one actually, that will just talk about different business models with subscription.
Great.
But the last thing I did is this is the kind of thing we use. It's called the member risk monitor. So we use this to sort of, these are what this is what comes up when we get our alerts. So for example, we get an at-risk alert if a client falls before a certain threshold, right? If they fall below, less than less than less than or equal to 4. I was just checking that. I was wondering if that greater sign was right around then. But yeah, we use that to sort of let us know. So if it falls below that score, that's when the trigger takes place, and then it notifies, the team that, this client's potentially going to leave us soon. Let's come up with an action plan to resolve this and set up a call and see what we can do as well. And then obviously there's needs attention, which is, that's potentially becoming a risk of churning. So, ideally, if we can resolve it in that stage, it's way it's way easier to retain them than it is if they hit the at risk stage. So, and the same thing with ideal customers. If they are a score of between 9 and 10, this is a great opportunity. Like they're really, really getting great service and they're really enjoying it and they're getting lots of value. So why not ask, if they want even more value, if there's any upsell opportunities, revenue expansion opportunities there. If there's any case studies, we can ask for any reviews, referrals. This is the ideal stage that customers are really happy to sort of advocate for us as well. And this is one of the last slides. So the last thing I was going to mention was when it comes to SaaS, usually the main sort of things that it would be, that a health scoring model helps with is it helps to understand, you're able to sort of track the feature adoption. You want to sort of use these are factors. So, you want to look at the onboarding, have they completed onboarding? That's an influencing factor. Have they activated a certain feature? How much are they using that feature? That's another certain factor for that model. These are quite popular, factors that influence health score. And, you can use that as well to actually, check to see, how likely are they to renew? Do we need to take any action here to get them to renew their contract if it's on a yearly basis? If it's not on a yearly basis and it's just a monthly basis and they're rolling contracts, then that's fine. But this isn't a sort of thing you can think about. And then when it comes to service-based, this is something where you can look at the engagement and also look at the how often they're using the support, which was what I mentioned earlier about, how often are they having those meetings. And then when it comes to agencies, you can look at, you can look at project participation. So, how many projects are they working on with us? How often are they using our services? Are they creating a lot of projects or are they not creating that many projects? Because you can really gauge, how they're valuing the service there as well. If you're an agency on subscription, for Pixel right now, we're actually both. So we're service-based and agency-based. So we typically look at all of the factors here, along with the client feedback, which applies to all three as well, which is also really useful because, it might look okay, but if the client gives you really poor feedback, then there's something wrong that you're not tracking. So you need to find out what that is, and then you can change your health score because it's not set in stone. It's, it's kind of like live documents. It's a live score. It's always going to change. You're always going to adapt and improve it based on new data that you get and new data that you're collecting. So that's the final point is, even if you have
I guess
a score.
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Even if they do engage and your health score is positive because you're tracking engagement, do you have bad and good engagement?
Sorry, I say that again.
Um, I was just saying that's a really good point that you made in terms of engagement, but maybe the user, even though he's engaging, with your system, maybe they're also complaining about something that's not working. So
Yes.
do
Yeah.
you how do you differentiate between good and bad engagement, and how does that affect your health score?
Yeah, I think you just create thresholds again. We use thresholds for these things. So we use touch points. So, you know, when was the last touch for this client? If it was more than a certain period of time ago, then they're assigned a score. And then if it's longer, then they're assigned another score. And it's like based on a threshold criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of do the same thing with the meetings. We have SLAs as well. So we set SLAs for, you know, if a meeting, you know, is not hasn't taken place within a certain time frame, then that's a red flag. You know, the SLA has not been met. These are the standards that we need to uphold. So we've got these sorts of things in place, and these are triggers to that impact the engagement score, and that
Mm-hmm.
then in turn impacts the health score.
Brilliant.
But you know, I think that's it. I think that, you know, that's my sort of presentation there on health scoring. The next thing is, you know, just the final thoughts. So, you know, just I'd advise, you know, if you're doing everything manually, definitely think about setting up a health scoring system. That you're not going to be relying on gut feeling anymore. You're automating things, so it's great for scaling. You know, when you're scaling, you know, you're able to sort of really make an impact as well, because you're saving time and money for your business, and you're also you know, able to focus your attention on more important things that for the business, such as, you know, generating more revenue. You can look at, you know, revenue expansion, look at sales. You can focus on advocacy because that helps as well. And yeah, and you can just be more proactive with the data that you have, because you're getting this data and you can use it straight away rather than gauging things. But that's pretty much it.
Brilliant. I love the first bit, like stop relying on gut feeling, because sometimes do you feel so obviously you've had a fair share of experience in this field, but is that what was happening, or is that something that you've seen happening? Like people
That
just be like, yeah, I
yeah,
think it's going well.
that's the problem we had to solve at the beginning. So we when we because we're a new company, everyone has scaling challenges. That's what we were having. We were scaling, you know, we were
Hmm.
growing, getting more clients, and then we had to think about, okay, we probably need to automate this, right? And make it a system that, you know, doesn't require so much manpower, so we can focus
Hmm.
our efforts on other things. So we just started looking at reasons why people are churning, collecting that data, and then started to use that with the check-ins as well. So we do like a check-in with the client as well, to find out, you know, maybe areas which they're not quite satisfied, any ways that we can improve their experience. And we use
Hmm.
all of that information just to improve our services, but also, you know, use that to impact and gauge, improve the health score, basically.
Yeah, and I guess your growth in the past 2 years is really a testament of, you know, how this mindset shift really helped you drive expansion.
Yeah, I think honestly, just being Pixar's given me a lot of experience actually. So just being able to sort of learn here has been a great opportunity.
Amazing. Well, that makes us happy. It makes me happy to hear. I love when people just like get their hands dirty and build amazing systems, and they come and show it to us here in the community. So, Cameron, thank you so much. Should we open
Amazing.
our Let's open up
Yeah.
our Q&A. We still have about 10 minutes to go. So, people in the audience, this is your time to shine. Drop all your questions in the chat, and I'll try to get to all of them if we have time. But Q&A is now officially open. Here you go. And as we wait for a few questions to come in, I have a few questions from our form, and so I'm gonna start with the first from Eric, which I think I've also seen Eric in our YouTube here. So, how do you avoid over contacting folks? Which is a very very good point, because maybe you do realize that they haven't opened your onboarding or they're not engaging. How do you avoid over contacting them?
Yeah, that's a good one, because, you know, you can say like in sales, like follow up, follow up, follow up, right? That's the goal in sales. But when it comes to customer success, you can get to a point where you're being really annoying, if you're just constantly bombarding them with information. I think you really just have to sort of gauge it yourselves that, you know, this is part of the this is I don't think this is something you can gauge manually, or automate. So you have to sort of do this manually, and you just sort of look at things. And I typically say every 3 days, but it also depends on the use case, right? So if you're speaking to somebody that you're delivering a project for example, You might follow up a few times and then space it out after you followed up every 3 days, and then space it out on a weekly basis, and that sort of thing. So you just it's all, there's no set criteria, in my opinion, to sort of gauge what that is.
Have you ever gotten a complaint of people saying, "Stop harassing me"?
Only with sales. So when I'm doing outreach, somebody's like, "Stop messaging me," or "Go away," or "I don't want these messages anymore," because you're following up with them. But customer success, not yet.
Cool. Yeah, and sometimes you get, even LinkedIn requests, and you're just like, "We don't want any, thank you."
Yeah.
We've got another question here from Nathan. So we talked about best practice and what to do to avoid churn and to prevent it. But actually, are there any common mistakes that companies make when trying to automate churn prevention? Let's talk about when things fail.
Yeah, I'm sure, when it comes to your actual scoring system, you have to really think about that, and you have to really use the data and try not to make any assumptions, because the moment that you're making any assumptions is the moment that, there might be a gap in, your data, what it's saying based on, and then comparing it to what you're sort of assuming is the case, and, the reasons why they're churning. And if you do that, then your health scoring system is not going to be accurate. So you kind of have to use the data to make sure, if you've actually been given feedback from the client that says those things, or if you've actually got the data that proves, clients that don't do this particular action on the software lead to a churn here, that's what the best thing to do is. And then when it comes to actually thresholding those scores, you can use the data again on that. So you want to look at where a client is when they're churning, how much are they using it, what threshold are they in there, and then you want to look at a healthy client, where's that threshold, and then you can sort of base the scoring system from the the high and the low, and that will sort of help you in that way.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, I don't see any other questions coming through besides John asking what your LinkedIn profile is. So I'm gonna go and fetch that, sharing it in the chat. Oh yeah, because I need to share it on LinkedIn as well. Cameron, I've got a spicy question for you, because given that you're into this day to day, right? You do this every day. You've built the system. You got your haha moments with automation. What is your prediction for this year with AI and
Prediction with AI.
automation and everything that's going on?
Do you know what? It changes every day, because there's so many changes every day. You're hearing this new story. Like I've seen posts from AI saying, there's an AI that can read your mind now, or there's an AI that can see through walls. And I've seen these sorts of, this is real tech as well. But I think right now, I'd definitely say that we're going to be using AI. Everybody's going to be using AI to assist them with their jobs, to help them, with their admin, even to do a lot of things that we were originally doing. It's obviously going to need sort of man that, overseeing and approving the data that it comes up with, or approving the information. But it's definitely going to be something that's going to be more involved over time. I don't see it taking our jobs right away, but it could do. So I don't know. Let's see.
We always say in the community that it's not going to be AI that will take your jobs. It's going to be people that know how to use it very well.
Yeah.
So always stay up to date with all the relevant new skills and stay in the community, because, then we can support you and keep you informed. Absolutely. And Cameron, one last question. What would your advice be to anyone working? I guess we also just said, stay relevant, stay informed, but anyone who is looking into RevOps as well, or just general operations, what would you say to them?
I'd say keep learning. Just literally keep learning. Build a personal brand as well. Start talking about these things. Those are the most important things. Keep even if you're in RevOps, that doesn't mean that you're there's more things to learn. You might learn on the job, but you've got opportunities to learn extra things as well. Outside of work, after hours, doing courses, just to enhance your skills and develop. And I guess the mindset would be just to focus on, the success of the company is your success as well. So, anything you can contribute to the company is also going to be what you're going to get as well out of it.
I love it. Neil says learning is earning. Absolutely. All right. Well, that would be all for us today. Cameron, thank you so much for, taking the time. I know today you also had a day off and you chose to be here. So I
Oh, no, it's fine.
hugely appreciate you so much. So thank you so much. It was absolutely a fantastic presentation. I learned so much from it, and I hope our audience did too. So yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Claudia. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. See you in the community. Bye.